So the me resides in this as me, is residing in all of that as me, so that me, through this me, talking
If you have ever listened to someone, a spiritual guru, a leader, a speaker, and thought like, I understand the words they are saying, but I still have no idea what they actually mean. Right? So that's the curse of knowledge. A psychology student from Stanford, Elizabeth Newton, conducted an interesting experiment in 1990 that became a classic lesson in communication. So she divided participants of this experiment into two groups, tappers and listeners. The tappers were given a simple task. Pick any song, a well-known song, like say Happy Birthday song, and tap out the rhythm on a table. Something which we used to do in school, right? School desk. And the other group, listeners group, they have to guess the song. So before they started this experiment, the tappers were very confident. They predicted that the listeners would guess the song, at least 50% of the time. Because these are like very famous songs and everybody knows. But here is what actually happened. They ran this experiment multiple times with different groups, right? Out of 120 songs tapped, the listeners, they guessed correctly only 3 times, just 3 times. The success rate was 2.5%. And the tappers were stunned, like, how do you not get this? It's so obvious. So this is what happened. As they tapped, the tappers had the melody playing loud and clear in their head. Right? They heard the tune, as they tapped. And it felt so obvious to them. And they assumed it must be obvious to others. But the listeners, all they heard were random thuds, like no melody, no context, just some sound, noise actually. And that's when Elizabeth Newton uncovered a deep psychological bias, the curse of knowledge. The invisible trap, we all fall into. The curse of knowledge is simple. Once we know something deeply, we forget what it's like not to know it. And that makes explaining things to others way harder than we think. And this happens everywhere. A classic example of this is leadership talks, CEO speeches, town hall sessions and things like that. The leaders stand on stage and they say things like, we will unlock shareholders' value, right? Or we aim to drive synergies for bottom line growth. We will leverage our core strength to maximize profit, blah, 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 blah. And it all, sounds important. But what does it actually mean to the people who are listening, especially the new joiners? Same with all the spiritual gurus, academicians. Their knowledge level is like here, and their listeners are here. So there is the huge gap. Same with marketing campaigns, like tech product companies. Like imagine saying something like this: our AI-powered, end-to-end, cloud-based, fully integrated ecosystem leverages synergies to create next-gen solutions. Sounds very sophisticated, but did you get it? Now compare that to Apple's marketing. 1,000 songs in your pocket. That was Apple's campaign when they launched the first iPod. No jargon, no technical specifications, just a vivid, clear message. For that matter, you don't see any technical specifications in any of the Apple ads, thanks to Steve Jobs. Because Steve Jobs and Apple, this foundation principle. If you confuse, you lose. I repeat, if you confuse people, you lose them. Great teachers meet you where you are. I love this quote. Let me repeat. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. By the way, the same principle applies in parenting, in relationships, and in our everyday conversations, interactions, any form of communication. So how to avoid this curse of knowledge in our everyday life? So here is a simple trick. Just ask yourself, would a 10-year-old understand this? If not, make it simpler. Use stories, use examples, and make it easy to relate to. And most importantly, check if the listener really understood by asking questions. The biggest mistake we make in communication is this. We assume that just because something makes sense to us, others understand it too. And so we repeat ourselves, thinking, saying it over and over to help the other person. But clarity doesn't come from repetition. It comes from translation. We need to translate our message into words that make sense to the other person who is listening. So next time you explain something, just pause, step into their shoes, whoever is your listener, and remember, just because it's clear in your head doesn't mean it's clear for others. So great communicators, they don't just tap, they tune in. They tune in or adjust to the frequency of the listener. So thank you so much for tuning in. I am Sreejith Krishnan. Stay happy, stay healthy.